All right. Looks like we are live on the Boxing Source YouTube channel. I am James Vella. I am the host of the Boxing Source radio show, and um, also the leader of the Boxing Source on social media. You could catch us, on multi, platforms that include the page on Facebook. You could also, go to Instagram, basically, um, and find us on the Boxing Source. You could also go to the page on Twitter at Boxing Source 2. And then also, you could, like I said, catch us on YouTube. So you could also do that. What we're trying to do here is we are trying to put up a discussion in reference to Deontay Wilder. So we're trying to see if we could get this thing going. I did invite a guest to see if he would be able to come on here. So we're going to see if he'll be able to set things up in order to join the discussion. I sent an invitation in reference to this discussion. But also you can try to go through the live discussion on YouTube. All you got to do is go on the page for the Boxing Source, and you could find us on YouTube. So that is one of the things that we're going to see if you could join in to the discussion. And once you're able to join in the discussion through the stream yard. So here we go. Shout out to YSM Sports Media. He's out there working hard, you know what I'm saying? So be sure to support YSM Sports Media as well. Darkness has fallen. Ask the question, do you like Wilder or not? Because I don't. Well, if you have followed me through the Boxing Source, you would know that other people that have called in, or if you follow me on social media in boxing forums, that I've been claimed to be the biggest Deontay Wilder hater in the planet. All of this is just me, just trying to put out information about Deontay Wilder. One of the things is that while I do cover the sport of boxing, one of my things is that I am a historian by hobby, so I just do research on the regular. So when it comes to Deontay Wilder, what I do is I follow this career, pretty much before he won the WBC Heavyweight Championship over Bermond Severn in January 2015. So this is pretty much coming up to 5 years since Deontay Wilder won the WBC Heavyweight Championship. And we see that Darth Vader. And we see what Deontay Wilder has done over the course of his professional career, and that we're going to see if things come in here. I think we do have a person on. I'm going to see if they're able to be added on properly. Let's see if he's good to go. What's going on?
What's going on, man? What's going on? So is it JR Junior? I'm not
JR.
sure what your name is. JR. Okay.
JR. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can call me Craig or C Dub, whatever you want to call me.
Well, it got C Dub on here, so we're gonna go with C Dub. What's good?
Yeah, what's good, man? How are you?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. So you were able to join into the discussion, and get you in here. Of course, just to go into a background of why you're on here for this particular stream. I had posted a live video on Facebook, going over Deontay Wilder, and one person that is part of another group kind of like wanted to, do a rebuttal of sorts. And I was like, well, okay, if you want to do a rebuttal, you can go ahead and do a rebuttal. So he invited me to another group on Facebook because he said he was going to do a live on that
Was,
particular
was this
group.
Brian?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And 1 day passed, nothing. 2 days passed, nothing. So a few days passed, and I was like, "Yo, man, what's good, man? Well, what's happening with the video? I mean, I thought you were
Well,
gonna go through, so
just let me interject there. Just to
yeah."
let you know, his grandma died 2 days ago. So
Man, yeah, you should have. Yeah, yeah. Damn, damn.
yeah,
Yeah,
so Brian with his live videos, but he's good for it all.
yeah,
But yeah, I think that took his the wind out of his sails, to be honest,
yeah,
with his nana. So
yeah.
yeah, I think that's the big difference. I've been speaking to him tonight, but yeah, he's
Okay,
cool. He's good. He's good now.
okay, okay,
He's
okay.
good.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Yeah, just as long as he's able to handle all of that stuff first, that's first and foremost. So
Yeah, he's fine. Man.
once he's
He's
able to
fine.
do that, and then get things back into speed, then he'll be able to jump back on, man. But like I said, you wanted to come into the discussion, so wanted to strike things up. Know that you had a few things going on. Fairly busy today, fairly busy weekend
Yep.
here for you. You know what I'm saying? So, you were just getting back from the Man U
Man
match.
United game. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
just took my boy there to see him win 4-0 against Norwich tonight, so that's pretty good. Pretty good. So the boys were loving it, but yeah. So I'm on here. Look, I want a discussion about this week, and I know you're more of a going back into the debate with AJ and Wilder. I know you are a big AJ fan, and I know that. As a countryman of Anthony Joshua. I think that the reason why I dislike him so much, I say dislike him so much, I dislike him is probably because of the casuals over here. That's the thing that sort of annoys me more than anything. The guy can do nothing wrong,
I've heard that a lot. I've heard that a lot
we're
there.
going back 2-3 years ago when we've got something over here called the Sports Personality of the Year Award, which is like the award for the greatest sportsman we've got over here. And they literally there was a segment of 20-minute segment on Anthony Joshua, and they brought Tyson Fury in, and all they concentrated on was his I think it was his homophobic comments that he made sort of 3-4 years ago. And I just thought at that point, I thought, wow. It's like Anthony Joshua's the golden boy. Wilder's Fury's just some sort of fucking gypsy that nobody wants to entertain. And this was the British public. And at that point, I just thought, no, Joshua's not for me. Not for me. As a boxer, we'll go on to that. I'll give him his respect, but for me, as a massive Tyson Fury fan, it upset me. It upset me.
Yeah, I think that is one of the big subjects in reference to British boxing is how a lot of people in the UK treat the gypsy community out there. That's a big issue. And with Tyson Fury having that background, that automatically cancels him out from a lot of boxing fans to follow him on the regular, because like me, what I say on the whole is like UK supports the sport of boxing unlike pretty much any other country in the world. So it pretty much doesn't matter how big the fighter is, or what weight class they're in. As long as they have a certain group of followers behind them, they will go to any fight that person has, no matter where it is in the UK. You see what I mean? So with the guy like Tyson Fury, 6'7", moves around the ring like probably
6'9", I
No,
think Fury.
6'9", yeah, 6'9" or so. Probably
Yeah.
moves like no other heavyweight of his size in history. I mean, he kind of like is in one with the ring, basically.
Mm. Yeah.
So, you talk about guys like, yeah, you don't want to really compare him to a Muhammad Ali or anything like that. But the thing about it is that he kind of like moves himself around the ring, kind of similar to that. So,
Yeah, he does. He does. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's the thing about it. So,
Never be he'll never be your standard, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I can see it. I can see that.
so with somebody that loves the sport, like he does, and kind of like is having so much fun in the ring, that he should be having a much bigger following than that.
Yeah, he
And
should.
the thing about it is that they don't necessarily treat him well in the UK, and that's how it kind of like carries over here with his fights in the US. Because I mean, you kind of like compare him to maybe say like a Ricky Hatton. Ricky
Well, it's
Hatton had
no. There's no
yeah,
comparison.
there's no
No
comparison.
comparison.
You have
No.
the whole cheering section for him. I mean, I've said this for the longest time, that one of the best atmospheres that I wish that I would have been at was for the Floyd Mayweather Ricky Hatton fight,
Yeah.
because they were just like from start till hours before after the fight ended, they were still going.
Yeah, and just interject on that. It's a shame that Joe Cortez fucked that fight up for me. That's the biggest problem I had with that fight, because I think it was a great fight and I think Yarton was on it, but Joe Cortez just fucked it up.
Yeah.
Typical Las Vegas, Floyd Mayweather shit. Now, I'm not saying that Ricky would have won that fight, but I've called Joe Cortez on his live post about it, and he's defended it, and it's bullshit. But yeah, sorry, go on, move on from that.
Yeah. Real quick before we get into this conversation, let me see if I could. Okay. They're just. Excuse me. Yeah, they just wanted to be a spectator in here, so we're gonna pretty much go at it. Like I said, the subject here is in reference to Deontay Wilder,
Yeah.
and that he kind of like is in one class as far as like heavyweight fighters and heavyweight legacies go. I did have the brief history of him over the past 5 years or so. Like I said, we're pretty much coming to the time of 5 years since he defeated Bermane Stiverne for the WBC Heavyweight Championship, to win the WBC Heavyweight Championship. And the thing about it is that he's kind of like a polarizing figure in boxing groups, because you do have people that do support him. You do have a lot of people that don't support him, and you have guys that are considered as haters, as far as like being extremely against Deontay Wilder in every single thing that he does.
Yep.
With me being having a podcast for almost it's going almost to about 5 years now. He has been one of the subjects back and forth on many of my podcasts. So we do talk about him, and then also in accompanying podcasts as far as like Deontay Wilder's overall appeal, pretty much in the States and worldwide. And so that's kind of like one subject that is talked about, but this one here is to basically talk about Deontay Wilder's career and his career path, and how I don't necessarily say that he's going quite in the direction that most of his fans feel that he does. One, and then two, the thing about Anthony Joshua ducking Deontay Wilder, I just don't. I don't say that by any sense of the imagination.
Yeah, well, we can
Um,
move on to that. I mean, I've got my views on that, and you've got your views. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure either of us know, but we've got our views, so we can move on to that. We can talk about that.
yeah, yeah. So, you could go ahead, because they probably have some thing going or whatever it is, but from what has gone on over the course of the past almost 3 years now, um,
Yep.
it's basically gone back and forth between Deontay Wilder and
Yep.
Anthony Joshua.
Yeah.
So you could go ahead and put your case up.
Well, I mean, for me, as people know, I'm from England, from Leeds, Josh Warrington country. If you know Josh from Leeds, who's going to be fighting Shakur Stevenson soon. We could talk about that later, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, the thing for me is that I'm a fan. They are the big three. Let's start with that. They are the big three. We talk about them. They are levels above the lot. For me personally, I think Wilder and Fury are the top two. I think they're the best around now. For me, I'm getting my tickets, and I'm coming across to Vegas next month to watch. I'm a big fan of both. But I'm going to be on. I'm going to also. I'm going to be a massive Fury fan in that fight, and I'm going to be on Wilder's ass on that. In that fight with the Americans, I've talked to Brian. Brian's going there, and a few others. We're all going out there. Your man Jamil Parker, he's going to get me the press pass tickets on Friday. So me and Jamil, we're tight and shit like that. So, and I
Yeah.
know you work with Into Boxing. I think you work with Into as well. I think
Was at one point, but I kind of didn't
missed
kind of
that.
keep up with it. So
That's fair enough. But yeah, so I mean, I see that those two are the best around. I love Tyson Fury, everything about him, inside, outside the ring. Same with Wilder. It comes down to the same thing with this fight that's coming up. I mean, I can't predict. I won personally. You may have seen on the Facebook page that in the first fight I won $7,000 on that fight. I had the draw with various other bets, which I think was Stevenson getting knocked out by Gavoskic, and I think Ortiz was fighting that night as well. I think.
yeah, he fought on that card.
And I think he got a knockout in the last round stoppage as
Yeah,
well.
he got the stoppage. Yeah.
But yeah, so I won that. But same again with this fight. I'm not so sure. I really aren't so sure, Jay. I'm not so sure which way I go. I mean, for me, going into that fight, he'd had two fights against two weak opposition. So he's probably at 70%. Literally come back and lost whatever he'd lost, his weight and everything else. And I talked to him, and it's funny actually, the Josh Warrington versus Lee Selby fight. And that's when he announced his fight, his first comeback fight. And he said, I'm going for it big time. I'm going to be coming back and I'm going to be fighting Wilder after the second, the third fight. And he said that. I said, well, how are you feeling with this? And he said, well, I'm nowhere near where I should be, but I'll come back. And he says, I'll beat the bum. He said, in true Fury style, he said, I'll beat the bum. But he was true to his word. I mean, I still think that he was 70% at that point. I really do. I'd literally, 2 years out, lot of coke habit, been on the cocaine, the booze, the food, everything else, the drugs, everything else. And he came back in his third fight. He looked fantastic. It looks happy. But if that was 70%, wow, I'd like to see 100%. But you see, that's when the Wilder fans would come back and say, oh yeah, well look what he did against Otto Walling. Oh yeah, he almost lost. Oh, he got his eye cut after the second round, and he looked shit and everything else. Well, what people don't realise in that fight, he got his eye cut after the second round, which any fighter could get. Any fighter could have that. Any fighter. And his cutman did a great job, by the way. But he came through that fight massively and still won and dominated that fight. What anybody said. So for me, that's a nonsense. It's a bullshit. Sports constantly fucking crap. Sorry for swearing, but constantly shit. So I look at that and I think, well, if he is at 100%, Wilder's got his work cut out. What I would say with Wilder, I think he is improving. He's improved for years and years. He's got better and better from the Wild Swinger days, which I had 5 years ago, which I kept calling him Deontay Wild Swinger and all that, windmill. So now where he is, he's improved. He's improved as a boxer. he's still nowhere near the league he should be as a pound for pound fighter. But obviously, when you come to the heavyweight division, it sort of doesn't matter in a way, because his athleticism and his will and his way to keep going. It's fighting from round 1 to round 12 is hard, and that's why I say it's hard for me to predict. I'm not sure with mind and heart, brain and heart. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go. I'm desperate for Fury to win that fight, because I'm going to be there and I'm going to troll the Americans' ass massively. Brian and the likes know what's going to happen if that fight, and he does win. But I'm not sure which way I'm going to go, just because of the skill set. It's just literally it's the two ends of the spectrum: the power, the strength versus the skill, and the boxing brain. And it's like, wow, that's the fight that for me that I want to see. Which one is going to come out on top? And it could be either. I'm not so sure. But going, for Wilder's point of view, I like him. I like everything about him, inside, outside the ring. I think the bravado with him, this thug attitude, and I don't believe that. I know he's had scrapes with other boxers. I think was it Washington or whoever it was. I'm not so sure I believe the thug sort of thing that he comes across with. But I think everything inside and outside the ring, I love. I love watching him fight. I love the knockouts. I'm a big knockout guy. My favorite fighters at the minute: Triple G, Errol Spence.
Let's see. We have a guest coming in here. I guess something that was said made him be inclined to join into the discussion.
Who's this?
This is brother Mike Grady.
Okay.
He is a huge contributor to the Boxing Source radio show. He's one of my biggest contributors, always calls in, always gives in his take on what's going on in the sport of boxing. And he is the vice president of the Deontay Wilder fan club. And so he joined in because he has somewhat of a rebuttal to what you said. So I want him to join in here to see if he could add to this discussion.
Okay. I'd like to listen to this.
Well, I wouldn't say I have a rebuttal just yet. He didn't make any what I would say explicit points in terms of either way, but I wanted to confirm something that I thought I heard. So you said you scored the fight a tie? That's what you scored the original fight?
No, I didn't. I scored the fight a Fury win, but I had a big bet on the tie, on the draw. I won nearly $7,000 on that fight, because basically the way I saw it, I preached on and before the fight how the fight would go. I said, listen, the way I see it is that Fury will outbox him and probably get screwed on the scorecards, maybe give him a draw. The other option is that Wilder knocks him out. Now the two came out. Obviously, Fury got the draw, outboxed him. But Wilder almost knocked him out. So it's sort of the two sort of things the way I saw the fight going out, and it did. That's how it came out.
So I probably heard something that you didn't say. Could you say what you thought in the fight that Fury pretty much won the fight? And
I think so. I think Wilder. I think obviously he won the two rounds with the knockdowns. I think he probably could give him two more, at most, maybe one, maybe two, which would be 4 rounds, 8-4, so 8-6. So a 2-point victory for Fury would have been fair for me, but it wasn't a robbery, by the way, because when somebody gets 2 knockdowns like that, I can see why the robbery wouldn't be in existence.
Yeah, so I in my score of the fight, I scored the fight a draw. I thought a draw was very it was fair. I could have also saw the fight going either way in someone else's favor. But it just kind of depends on what the judges like. So I scored quite a few rounds. It's probably 2 or 3 rounds, I think, that I had that they were very close in terms of it could be a tie round, and just depends on what you like. If you have the Matador versus the the bull. It just depends on if you like the bull or the matador. So,
well, it's interesting. Sorry, what's your name again, mate? What's your name?
Mike.
Yeah. So
Yes.
the thing is, Mike, what the weird thing is with this is that with American boxing, I can see differently over here, but over there, it's always this hit and don't get hit sort of style, and I think that usually the judges sort of tend to score it that way. Which is the aggressor potentially doesn't get the decision, where it's more of the flashy, the skillful sort of fighter, which was kind of the complete reverse with that. Because if that had been the case, let's reverse it round. Let's just say Wilder is the American, or let's just say that Fury was the American fighting like that. Would he have got that decision?
It depends on who he was. It depends on who he is, because if we take Canelo Alvarez won most of his fights like that.
T-Mobile and T-Mobile Arena, or MGM Grand, Canelo is
well, I don't want to speak about Canelo because I cannot stand him. I hate him. I don't want to talk about it. I'm a big Triple G fan. I'm a big Triple G fan, by the way, and the guy got robbed in both fights. But let's move on from that.
Yeah. All right. So the thing with Wilder and Fury, in reference to the first fight, going into the first fight, I felt that Wilder was going to defeat Tyson Fury, mainly because of the rust that Tyson Fury had. I thought he was going to, I thought he was going to eventually fade in the later rounds, and then that Wilder would catch up to him and eventually finish him. But in the fight, what I didn't expect was for Tyson Fury to kind of move around the ring that he did, one, and then two, at the outset of the fight, he kind of like set what the range was and set what the distance was. So he was able to land with his jab, but Wilder was not able to land with his. And that kind of like set the pace for what was going on over the course of the fight.
Yeah.
And that, Deontay Wilder missed a lot of his shots because he was out of range, and he was stationary a lot of times. So the thing about it is, when you're stationary and you're going up against a guy that moves around the ring with his feet, number one, and then number two, moves around his head, you have issues trying to land solidly against an opponent like that. So I felt that Tyson Fury had like a lot of those rounds, earlier rounds, won because he was able to, not only control the pace of the fight, but also, command the connect percentage between those two fighters. Once, Deontay Wilder like switched things up a little bit later rounds, like in the 7th, 8th round, that's when he started to catch up with Tyson Fury and was able to knock him down in the 9th round, basically. And then Fury was able to get up, but he kind of like wasn't really affected by that first knockdown. That's why he was able to respond the way that he did
all the second
that round.
All the second, by the way. All the second.
Yeah, and then you had the thing with the 12th round, and the 12th round was that, I've said that after looking at the replay of that knockdown, basically Tyson Fury dipped his head down and got caught with one punch.
Lazy.
Yeah, and then he fell back, and then he got grazed with the other hand when he went to the canvas. So a lot of people felt that he was out of it. He did not look out of it because he was fully coherent. So he could see, what was happening with Jack Reese. He could pay attention to the count and everything like that. That's why he was able to get up when he was able to get up. And he was still able to finish off that 12th round. And, that's where we got that draw. Going into the rematch, I don't know. There's still like a lot of questions going on both sides.
It's massive questions, and just to interject there. I mean, also you're talking about Wilder's jab; he couldn't get it off. Well, listen, Wilder's jab, he never had one originally, and I respect him because he's improved that massively. He's become a better boxer over the last. In fact, he's improved massively over the last 2, 3. 3 to 2 to 1 last year. He's getting better and better each time you see him fight, and I respect him for that. Because, like I said to you, all that wild swinger stuff, it's gone. It's gone. It's not there anymore. What I would say about the fight, I think with Fury going to the end of the fight, Remember, he'd only had 2 fights. He's come off the 3-year layoff. So his fitness wasn't there. I think he'll be better. I think it will be better. His fitness definitely better this time. But the only thing is that Wilder always goes from round 1 to 12. His fitness and his athleticism is second to none. You know, it's remarkable how good it is. This fight is so much a 50-50 and a coin flip. I cannot even... listen, as a big Fury fanboy as I am, I love Wilder too. I can't call it. I don't want to call it.
Now,
so I have comments now, JR. I have my comments.
Yeah, I was gonna go in. I was gonna hand it off to you, but because one of the things that you do talk about with Deontay Wilder is that one of the things that he usually does against his opponents is that he uses his left hand a lot. Whether it's with the jab or whether it's just pawing it out, he tries to do it to where he tries to drop an opponent's guard down a bit in order to throw a right hand.
The pawing jab, yeah.
Right, pawing jab.
Yeah.
But against Tyson Fury, he couldn't do it in the first fight because, like I said, with Tyson Fury being the taller fighter and the longer reach, he was able to control the range. And so when Deontay Wilder threw that jab, he couldn't necessarily land that jab early. So
and it won't work in the second fight either.
So now, Mike, what do you think that Deontay Wilder has to do in this second fight in order to be, more successful, landing significant shots against Tyson Fury?
So I'll answer that question in 1 second, but I want to make sure I comment for our listening, viewing audience in that Deontay Wilder actually did jab in the fight in the beginning. So for me, I had him winning the first 2 rounds because of his jab. And Tyson Fury was a bit more hesitant because of Deontay Wilder's ability to land first with his left hand. And so in the middle rounds, obviously Tyson Fury, used his movement and he used his jab a bit more. Deontay Wilder kind of stopped jabbing and was just throwing, right hands and things like that. And it was a lot of, I would say, inaction on his part. And he was, to me, had probably one of his worst performances in a fight outside of like Gerald Washington and things like that. But yet and still, he still tied the fight. So that speaks to his testament in his ability to win fights, even with one of the worst performances that he had in terms of consistency of throwing his jab, in terms of not being very patient, because a lot in the fight, what I saw was, and I watched the fight actually live. I watched the fight live, and so I was seeing Deontay Wilder pretty much rushing his punches, his right hand at least. And so what he would do is, Tyson Fury would do all of the feints. He would do 3 and 4 feints or whatever with the head movement. And Deontay Wilder, instead of like throwing the jab and then, 1, 2, he would either just throw a straight 2 and it would either land over Tyson Fury's like back as Tyson Fury ducked. And so leading to what you said, what he can do differently and what I saw and the reason why he got those 2 knockdowns and what he started doing later in the fight was being a bit more patient in how he threw his punches. And so a few things he can do. He can feint more. He can throw his jab, kind of like how he did with Luis Ortiz. So Luis Ortiz is a very intelligent fighter, a stationary intelligent fighter. Tyson Fury is a more mobile intelligent fighter. So this won't work a 1-for-1 what he does with Tyson Fury, but if he puts his hand out and makes sure that he touches Tyson Fury every time, or at least fakes Tyson Fury to think that he's going to touch him, Tyson Fury has to react. And if he doesn't react, that means he can touch him. And when he does react, you can play that whole chess match of making him react, and then you throw in the right hand when he needs to. But what he didn't do was he wasn't patient in throwing his right hand. And so the 2 times that he was very patient in throwing it, so Tyson Fury has this niche that he does as well too, where when he does the feint, when he does his evasion of the punches, I don't know if he ducked to his left or if he ducked to his right, but either way he ducked to his it might have been his left. It might have been his left, but every time he ducked, he would always come like this and stay in this position, ducked off to the left. And so Deontay Wilder continued like throwing over his back. And so the times that he didn't do that and he was patient in doing it, those were the 2 times that he landed on him, where he waited for Tyson Fury. So he did some type of jab movement. Tyson Fury ducked down, and then he landed. He landed as Tyson Fury, got into that position. And so if you go back and look at the film, whether you look for this or not, you'll see that this is what happened in those things. So being more patient is what can help him, and jabbing more. Those are the 2 simplest things that he can do, and probably going to the body a bit more too, while he's in closer with Tyson Fury.
I mean, can I just make a point about that? I think just going back to that, Mike, when you said it was his worst performance, just bear in mind, his worst performance when you go up, it's your opponent that you're fighting. He's not fighting Gerald Washington. He's not fighting, Stiverne. He's not fighting. He was fighting Tyson Fury. And by the way, it was Tyson Fury that not fought for God knows how long, 2 fights in 3 years. So I think it's a bit harsh to turn around and say it was his worst performance. Just remember that you're fighting. Give credit where credit's due. You're fighting a real good guy. Now, like going back to the knockdowns, what I was saying, the first one, and I always see it was pardon my French, but it's fucking lazy by Tyson. It was lazy. The way he just stood there and just allowed him to touch him up was not good enough for me. Not good enough. The second,
he allowed him to. Is that what you're saying? He allowed him to.
No, he allowed him to by his by his laziness, to be honest. But the second one was great, really good, really good. I thought it was over. The way he got up was beautiful, but yeah, I think sometimes with Wilder fans, I think they just don't give the credit to the opponent, which was worrying when you said that it was his worst performance. Just give credit where credit's due. This fight for me against 50-50, like the last one was, and I respect what you said. I think you've made a lot of good points there, and broke it down technically. But just think that sometimes as a Wilder fan, they can go OTT, and I think that's why they get a lot of shit. Like JR doesn't like Wilder. Maybe that's why JR doesn't like Wilder. I don't know why a lot of people don't like Wilder, because of his fans talking, going OTT at times. I love the guy. I think he's brilliant. I think he's absolutely brilliant. But just bear in mind that when you said that it's his worst performance, look who he's fighting. He's not fighting Luis Ortiz. He's not fighting Stiverne. He's not fighting Washington. He's fighting the man.
Let me rebuttal real quick, JR. Let me rebuttal.
Go ahead and rebuttal, and I'll do a synopsis of this thing.
When I say worst performance, I'm not belittling Tyson Fury as an opponent, because obviously Tyson Fury is probably the best win or tie that he has on his resume, is the best fighter that he has on his resume.
Absolutely.
And vice versa.
Absolutely.
So I'm not saying it in terms of the skill or the level of fighter. What I'm saying is in terms of what Wilder can control, it was his worst performance. In terms of him not being patient, in terms of him not using his jab, in terms of him. So how the Charlo twin who fought Harrison, how in the fight he looked very stressed and strained and like he was trying so hard to get the knockdown.
Yeah,
Jamel. So Wilder was also doing that. He was straining himself trying to get the knockdown as opposed to letting it come.
Very similar. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, like, it was his worst performance in what he could control in terms of things that he does in other fights that come to him a bit easier. He didn't do much of those things, and yet and still, 3 judges found it to be a tie. That's all I'm saying. Tyson Fury did what he should have done, and that should be the same strategy. And if Deontay Wilder uses that strategy that he did against Luis Ortiz to, not care about rounds and then think he can win at the end, that's not going to work with Tyson Fury. And I think that he's going to be more concerted to win rounds. He's going to jab a lot more. He's going to throw body shots, and that'll keep him in the rounds. And, at least early. That's what he has to do. He has to jab with him and throw body shots early to keep him in the rounds with Tyson Fury.
Well, I'll go into the thing, leading into the first fight. You had the thing with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. They announced that, they were going to fight each other. And, you did have a good number of people that you know, wrote off Tyson Fury because of one, his extended layoff, and two, with
Yeah.
him, fighting Pianeta and Sefer Seferi, so
Fair, yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and the thing about it was that Tyson Fury felt that he would have been good enough to defeat Deontay Wilder at that point. And leading into the fight, he was like, he didn't like how, the fight was kind of like, set up and agreed to and things like that. So we kind of came in there with some type of vendetta that, I'm gonna show Deontay Wilder that even if I'm not really in full strength, I'm still better than you. And so he basically went into that fight with that type of mentality and that type of mindset. And, it almost, got him the win. So leading into this fight, he may seem like he's confident to get the win in the rematch. But like I said, there's a lot of questions going into this fight. Number one, you got to
Massive
see,
questions.
we got to see how much Deontay Wilder has improved. You did have the fight, the rematch against Luis Ortiz, but
Fury's cut.
along
Fury's
with
cut, by the
along
way.
with along with a lot of people, I felt that there was no real way that Luis Ortiz was going to defeat Deontay Wilder, because
Never.
it's one thing with Deontay Wilder is that he does fight very well against guys that are shorter than him, significantly shorter than him, or a little bit shorter than him. Once they are above 6'4", 6'5", then he has a little bit of issues against those fighters. So, having a guy like Luis Ortiz who's stationary, doesn't move his head, and is right there in front of him, he could, take a few. He kind of like could take a few rounds off against Luis Ortiz, because he knows that as long as he's not completely in range for Luis Ortiz to hit him with the power shots, then he'll be able to do what he can do at any particular time against Luis Ortiz. With Tyson Fury, he couldn't really necessarily do that in the first fight. But now you have this thing here with Tyson Fury, who's left Ben Davison in that team, and now he's with a whole new squad, training over in Detroit and things like that. So now we got to see how is he going to do in his first fight with that team against Deontay Wilder.
It's another intangible again, and there's a lot of them in there. Again, it's just a fight. It's a 50-50 fight. There's so many things that are different from the first fight to this fight. Again, from what we've done and what we saw back in early December in 2018, there's a lot of things different. And that's again the same change of training, coaching and backing, management staff. Again, talking about Fury's eye when he got cut. Is that healed?
Yeah.
Things like that. As Wilder, like Mike said, as he developed enough, as he, is he going? You said, is he going to get better? And there's so many intangibles in this fight. It's fantastic for me, and I can't wait to be there live to watch it. I'm looking so forward to it, to see it with Brian and the rest of them. And the best man wins, hopefully. Hopefully Fury comes out with the dub. But if Wilder does, good on him. Respect. I can see that.
Yeah. And it's going to be a scene there. On February 22nd, it's going to be for the lineal or Ring Magazine Heavyweight Championship alongside the WBC Heavyweight Championship. So that's going to be something to look forward to. But now we kind of could get into the real topic of discussion. The thing with Deontay Wilder, we do have Mike here. He is, like I said, the vice president of the Deontay Wilder fan club. And I've said, on multiple occasions that.
I'll be back in just 2 minutes. I'll come back on this. Yeah. Okay,
all right, gotcha. Now, the thing about it is with Deontay Wilder, he has been a professional for, what has it been? Almost 11 years, 12 years now. And the competition that he's had hasn't necessarily, been up to par. We do talk about his reign as the WBC heavyweight champion, facing Eric Molina, facing Johan Duhaupas, Artur Szpilka. And then after Archer Spilka, you had the whole thing with Povetkin that fell through. Then he fought Chris Arreola, got injured. Then he came back, fought Gerald Washington, then fought Bermont Severn again, then fought Luis Ortiz. And then, after he fought Luis Ortiz, he went ahead and fought Tyson Fury. And then you had the draw there. Then he fights Dominic Brazil, the mandatory. And now he, has to win over Luis Ortiz again and is going up with another fight against Tyson Fury. So, my thing has been that, following him over the course of his professional career, up until, when he became a, first a fringe contender for the WBC Heavyweight Championship, and then being able to become the mandatory for the WBC Championship, he's kind of been, handed a few things here and there. So my thing has been,
what was he handed?
Okay. So my stance has been with Deontay Wilder that he was basically given the position to fight for the WBC Heavyweight Championship by fighting fighters that are much lower than the top 5 or 10 within the WBC. Okay. So you had his fight where he won like that, what was it, like the Continental Americas title or whatever it was. It was against Yarhe Lakovic. And then he has his fight against Malik Scott. That was, I think, around March. What was that? March 2014. Malik Scott wasn't, highly ranked in the WBC rankings. But apparently that fight eventually became the final eliminator for the WBC heavyweight title. They did order a second eliminator after that. And it was Brian Jennings against, I couldn't, I forgot who the guy was. I think he ended up moving down to cruiserweight. But Brian Jennings was ranked number 4, and the guy that he faced was ranked number 5. So, in comparison, you have a final eliminator with a guy that's ranked number 3 against a guy that's ranked probably within 15 to 20, while the second eliminator was, number 4 versus number 5. That doesn't make much sense to me how that is able to, go through. Then, after that, you had Bermont Severn defeat Chris Arreola to win that WBC title. And they went straight away to, the mandatory because of the rules with the WBC with the vacant belt. You have number 1 versus number 2. And then after that, they, have him immediately facing a mandatory contender. So he kind of went into that particular fight with this, I'm this, I'm that. I should be getting, most of everything. I should be the guy that should have the lion's share of the purse or whatever it is. And that's why, the fight pretty much got hung up for a good amount of time after Bermont Severn recovered from his injury. That was in the summer. That was in the summer of 2014, because they were seeing if they could make that fight between Wilder and Severn in summer of 2014, but Severn was injured. So that is why Wilder took that fight, in the interim before the WBC heavyweight title fight. And so going into the tail end of 2014, that's when you had, Wilder and his team going back and forth with Bermont Severn and Don King. And once they, eventually had that fight take place, it was Deontay Wilder that had the, lion's share of the purse over the defending champion, Bermont Severn. So you do have that. And then, like I said, over the, course of his reign as WBC champion, a lot of the contenders that he fought were not ranked in the top 5 of the WBC. It didn't take until he faced Luis Ortiz for him to face anyone that was ranked within the top 5 of the WBC. So my major thing with Deontay Wilder is that he has not really faced a lot of the top contenders not just within the heavyweight division, but just within the WBC rankings during his reign as WBC champion. And then, that's pretty much my major thing with that. I don't really bring the whole thing with, Anthony Joshua into that kind of discussion because that's something completely separate. And that just goes into kind of the direction
You mean
Anthony goes in comparison to what Deontay Wilder does.
I'm just clarifying when you say Anthony Joshua, I mean Anthony Joshua won a belt that was vacant, won a belt that someone won that was a vacant belt that he won after someone got hurt and he actually didn't beat the guy, then he beat that guy. Is that what you mean?
Okay, so if you want
I'm just trying to clarify.
If you want to go through that particular point, okay, let's run that. Okay, we're talking about the IBF Heavyweight Championship, right? November of 2015, Tyson Fury defeats Vladimir Klitschko for the Unified Heavyweight Championships. Before that fight took place, there was a choice by Vladimir Klitschko to fight either the WBO mandatory or the IBF mandatory. WBO mandatory is Tyson Fury. IBF mandatory was Vyacheslav Glazkov. He chose to fight Tyson Fury. And that's basically what happened. The IBF mandatory was due pretty much around that time. So there was nothing that could be done in that instance. So they were kind of thinking that Vladimir Klitschko would have been able to defeat Tyson Fury and then work out something with Glazkov in order to keep that IBF title and defend the IBF mandatory. But with Tyson Fury defeating Vladimir Klitschko, they activated the immediate rematch clause at that time. So within 10 days, the IBF stripped Tyson Fury of that IBF heavyweight championship. And so that's why you had Glazkov against Martin at the Barclays Center in January 2016 for that vacant IBF title. Okay.
And so Charles Martin won a vacant title by his opponent getting eliminated.
Title. Okay.
His opponent not being able to finish, right? So he didn't. Did he win the fight, or was it just like what happened? I don't. Help remind me what happened.
What does it show on Charles Martin's record?
The dope.
It's a win. It's a W.
It's a win. It's a W. So there you go. So now you have Charles Martin winning that IBF heavyweight championship.
The vacant IBF championship.
Okay, like Cal Severn won a vacant WBC championship over Chris Arreola. But going back to Charles Martin, okay, he wins that IBF title. Main event, Deontay Wilder wins against Artur Szpilka to defend and retain the WBC heavyweight championships. Okay. We all know who came in and who stepped into the ring. There's only one Tyson Fury. Right? But after that particular bout or that particular night, there was something that could have been done, right? You have Charles Martin as the IBF champion. You have Deontay Wilder as the WBC champion. You have two guys that were right there in the same card. You could have had a unification bout right then and there between those two guys. And one of the things that is said a lot is unifications trump mandatories. And the problem is that at that particular time, neither Wilder's team or Martin's team ever considered having a unification bout for the WBC and the IBF titles.
We all know why. We all know why.
I got a question.
Let me just go in there with Mike. With that, Mike, is that I think what we all understand is that as much as I don't like Anthony Joshua, he still is the cash cow. And if you're a fighter with the belt like Charles Martin was, which route are you going to go down?
I was going to say the exact same thing. If you were Charles Martin, who would you rather fight?
Yep. You know where you're going.
Would you rather get knocked out by Anthony Joshua or would you rather get knocked out by Deontay Wilder?
No,
Which one would you rather get knocked out?
Yeah, no. It's not that. It's not that, Mike, and I get that, Mike, and I believe that. But it's about the money. You know, and I always think that this, whatever we say and think about all these fights, just think it always comes back to money. You know, and when all these people turn around and ducking, and I'm not one for people turning around and say ducking, because it is business. It's all about the business. It's risk and reward and what money you're going to get from a fight. You know, I would cash myself out if I was a fighter to fight and get the big money against likes of Anthony Joshua, likes of Canelo. You know, that's how it works. That's how it works. It's not about who's going to knock you out and kill you more, which Wilder probably would do. It's about the money.
And I agree, but what I'm saying is, I agree with everything you said. What I'm saying is, so when we have these talks where people are like, well, the belt was out there, why didn't Deontay Wilder get the belt? We're explaining why Anthony Joshua had the better claim to the belt. Because in terms of, as you say, cashing oneself out, it is probably a smarter investment to cash yourself out with Anthony Joshua than it is with Deontay Wilder circa whatever time period that was.
Well, here's the thing.
3 years ago.
Yeah, but here's the thing with that in 2016. After January, they didn't even consider Charles Martin fighting Anthony Joshua at the time. Okay. They basically had something in reference to his first defense. They said he was going to either fight Dominic Brazil, Artur Spilka, or I think it was like Chris Arreola or somebody else.
It was Arreola, yeah, it was.
Yeah, Chris Arreola. So it was those three guys that they were considering for him having his first defense. It wasn't until like a couple of weeks later that, Joshua's team went over and said, hey, maybe we could go ahead and try to, see if we could have Anthony Joshua fighting Charles Martin for that IBF title. And so they made the whole offer to, push about $6 million over to Charles Martin's side for him to come over to the UK, and the rest is history with that. So, there you go. And he was able to, get the win, get the IBF championship. And, like I said, Joshua became the cash cow. So he, got, all those crowds against his first defense against Dominic Brazil. And then you had the fight against Eric Molina in December of 2016. And that set the stage for, Joshua and Klitschko, over at Wembley Stadium. And everything just shot up from there,
I digress. What was your topic about Wilder? I forgot what you originally said about Wilder before I took us on the side road. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying in reference to Wilder in his resume, as far as him not necessarily fighting the fighters that were available for him to fight, within his reign as a WBC heavyweight champion, not just unifying or anything like that, but just with his reign as WBC heavyweight champion, that he hadn't really faced, many people of note within the WBC. He's just now starting to do that at this particular point of his career after 38, 39 fights or so.
Well, unfortunately, that's sorry, just to butt in there. That's the problem with the WBC. It's the worst for me and the most corrupt of them all. They love the champs, and they will continue to love the champs and continue to ensure that the fights that and protect their champion. That's what the WBC do and will always do. Money rules. Money will always be the deciding factor. And you look at the WBC, you look at Canelo, and even Wilder. And going with Wilder, the Dillian White thing is that I'm a big Dillian White fan, by the way. It's what pisses me off big time. If I hear anybody else turn around and talk about Luis Ortiz and how Dillian White should fight Luis Ortiz, I'm going to strangle him. I am going to fucking get them by the throat, and I'm going to fucking strangle every single one of them, because it's absolute nonsense. Nonsense.
Well, and do you think he would beat Luis Ortiz, just out of curiosity?
I'm not sure. I think it'd be a good fight. Possibly not. I'm not sure. I mean, I like Luis Ortiz. He's slick. He's good. He's aging a little bit now. And the jokes about him looking 60 years old and everything. To be honest,
137 years old.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. Dillian's last two fights, he's looked dog shit. To be fair, real dog shit. Would he beat him? I don't know. But again, it's back to that money thing. Why would Dillian White want to fight sorry, just to go off the subject. Why would Dillian White want to fight the likes of Luis Ortiz? Risk and reward is, the risk is high, the reward is low. It's nonsense. He's got nothing to offer. He wants the chance of the title against Deontay Wilder. And this is what when people turn around and say, "Oh, you're just a Dillian White fan." Listen, I know if Dillian White fought Wilder would knock him out and beat him. I know that.
Say that again. Repeat that.
If Dillian White fought Wilder, he wants the fight, Wilder would knock him out and beat him. We know.
Oh, okay. I thought you said the other way around.
No. I know that. And that's me as a big Dillian White fan. But again, people have to get your fanboy nonsense out your ass and understand how this boxing game and the business game works. Stop being a fanboy. Stop thinking about how it is my fighter and this and disrespecting everybody. Just get your head into how the business works. That's all you need to do. It's that simple, that simple. Right. The risk and reward thing shits over everything in boxing.
Well, you did talk about Dillian White and the thing with Luis Ortiz, but I just said, talked about the thing with those two. Okay. And
can I rebuttal your first comment before we get on the next subject?
You could go ahead and rebut, but I'm gonna just end the thing with Luis Ortiz real quick. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Well, if you want to do that, then what you want to do?
No, I'm gonna go into the whole thing with Dillian White and Luis Ortiz.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned that Deontay Wilder. Make sure I'm getting your argument correct here. That in his 40 plus fights, he has been moved very slowly, and he has just recently started fighting the upper level opposition for him to stake his claim as being one of the top level fighters. Am I correct in understanding that is your?
That is one of the stances. That is one of the stances.
Okay, so what I would propose, or to people who says that. I would ask people at this point in time, if you were to go into the boxer's shoes, would you rather be A, Anthony Joshua, or B, Deontay Wilder? At this point in time, you rather be Anthony Joshua.
Rather be Anthony Joshua.
And why is that?
Because he has constantly faced the top competition. That one of the things that as a fighter, one of the things that you don't want to do by your peers and by your fans is be criticized because you don't fight the fighters that are out there that are known as the best within your division. If you constantly don't do that, then people will be on your case. There has been multiple articles in reference to Deontay Wilder before he even faced, the likes of Luis Ortiz and Tyson Fury. They were having articles in reference to Deontay Wilder saying that, he's not facing the guys that are within the top 10 or so within the heavyweight division. And while you're holding the WBC heavyweight championship, people are going to be looking to you to facing those guys. And when you don't face those guys, then that's a problem.
I don't think that's
probably want to be brought along slowly. But the problem is with Deontay Wilder is that by the time he won the WBC heavyweight championship, he was already 33, 34 fights in his professional career.
Okay. Can you answer my question, C-Dub?
So yeah, go on, Mike.
Would you rather, at this point in time in the person's career, would you rather be A, Anthony Joshua, or B, Deontay Wilder? Who would you rather be at this current moment in their career? Who would you rather be, and why?
I mean, it's a tough one. You're talking money or career-wise and what they've done.
Totality. The totality.
Fucking hell. I mean,
totality.
Wilder's
got a tongue twister here, but yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Wilder for me is the better fight. And by the way, just not to avoid the question, when people say, Wilder's not, fought this, not what he's not fought that. Remember, he tried to fight the likes of what's the Russian kid, the 6 foot Povetkin, yeah, the drug shit and all that, which was a bit of nonsense in the end, but he's tried. But what I would say with Wilder is that it's not him. It's not him or his team trying to avoid. Listen, I think the WBC are corrupt and disgusting, by the way. And I think it's tainting Wilder's name and resume. I really do. Going back to who would I rather be? Well, I don't like Joshua, so I wouldn't want to be him. But he is the cash cow, so it's hard to go away from Anthony Joshua. You know, just on the basis. I mean, he's got the 3 belts. Not so sure about how he won it and everything else, but he's got the 3 belts, and he is the cash cow. You know, Deontay Wilder, he I love him. I mean, he came up to open the restaurant over here in England. The restaurant, you might have seen that. It's literally 15 minutes from my house. I was fucking devastated. I missed that shit. But people over here, they love him. You know, they love him. And that's the fight that everybody wants to see, I think. Based on, like you just asked me there, Mike, who would have, you know, it's a tough question, tough to answer. But I do think that Anthony Joshua, just based on who he is and what he brings, you've got to go Joshua.
So Anthony Joshua. Well, I would go in the polar opposite of you guys, and I would choose Deontay Wilder, because when you hear, let's think of quality of life as well as that. So Anthony Joshua has made more money than Deontay Wilder, but quality of life, when you hear reports of Anthony Joshua saying that all but the moment was too big. All but, you know, I had a panic attack, you know, things like this.
You know, if you win,
and then when that culminates with him losing, which losing is fine. What? You can lose and you can, 300. You know, come back from it. J. Rock Williams is a 300. Testament of him losing in a great fight 300. And coming back really strong.
300. Yeah.
But again, everyone, JR, did not have the machine behind them. Everyone did not have, and you know, I didn't watch his Olympics. I've only watched a few people's Olympics with what I'm about to say, but everyone did not have the Olympics held in their country, and you know, they got.
Joshua's lucky to win that, by the way. He was very lucky.
But yes, but well, I don't know, but I'll take your word for it. But what I'm saying is, everyone didn't have the Olympics in their country and won a gold medal, which automatically. Which most times means that you have people who will automatically they will invest in you because they think the payoff will be greater later. So compound that with, you know, him having the machine behind him, machine being money, where they are able to pay, you know, fighters more than they're worth. Charles Martin, what's the guy named, they went 12 rounds with Anthony Joshua. He got knocked out or beat by Dylan White.
Parker?
He had the belt.
Joseph Parker.
Parker, yeah. Parker. So Joseph Parker, paying Joseph Parker, you know, paying people more. Everybody didn't have the machine to be able to pay people more than they're worth. And, you know, I think if you pose that question, I think that's a great question to pose on the website. Who would you rather be at this point in their career in terms of, you know, quality of life, money, everything that's in there? I think I would choose Deontay Wilder because he seems more put together, more seems like he has a better quality of life than the high pressure Anthony Joshua who the moment took him. It seemed like the moment swallowed him. Yeah,
it's hard to say against that with quality of life. That's
well, I wouldn't.
We don't.
What now? What do you say? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, with the quality of life, we don't know. I mean, it's kind of strange because obviously they both live different lives. You know, both live different lives, and they're both in different parts of the career. People know that my views on Anthony Joshua. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a lover of him. My personal view, which I've told you, JR, before, that I do think he's a bit of a fraud, and everything about it, just go away. And you know, just go away, boys. Sorry, my boys have just come in to say touchdown 49ers. Sorry, just go away. So the boys are just talking about the NFL. That's it. This is how big it is over here. I'm getting my boys into American sports. That's how ridiculous it is. But yeah, I mean, lifestyle. League. Yeah, no fun. Hey, listen, they're allowing the really crazy touchdown celebrations again now, which is nice. But Yeah, I mean the quality of life thing. I don't know. I mean it's kind of weird thing. But again, something you were touching on that one, Mike. We Olympic gold medal. Remember, we had Audley Harrison, or as we called him, Fraudley Harrison.
Fraudley Harrison.
You know, do you remember Deontay came over here and knocked him out in about 30 seconds or whatever it was. You know, so it depends. And we built him up to be big, but the guy was just a fucking joke. Joshua isn't a joke, and he's a good fighter. He is one of the big three. Whether you dislike him, I dislike him, we've got to accept he's one of the big three. Do I think that he could last against the other two, against Wilder and Fury? No, I don't. I think both beat him. You know. And I do think the battle next month, and I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there to troll every American if Fury wins. But it is the battle of the best two. Whoever wins that is number one. Like you said, JR, lineal. You know, they are lineal champion. That's it. You know.
Well, I mean, my thing with Anthony Joshua in reference to his fight against Andy Ruiz was he just was completely off for that whole time. And the thing is, I've told people this before. I said that day went up to New York, and I ended up being over in Pier 40 that afternoon, and it was like for some other event. And then I saw Anthony Joshua just strolling in there, like entering to go walk around Pier 40, and at that time, I didn't really notice that he was, out of it or anything like that. But this whole thing about the panic attack joint, I don't necessarily see that. But what I do see is that people were saying that when he was in New York during that week before the fight, that he was getting mashed up. Like he was getting up late night, right? And so if you think about that, and then you think about what happened over the course of the fight, and him being, all discombobulated,
and that's an excuse for him to lose, right?
No,
that's an excuse why he lost, right?
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what has been told. Okay, and so after that, when you see Anthony Joshua, all happy-go-lucky and smiles immediately after the fight, and staying in New York for about another week after the fight.
Yeah, was there a week. Yeah, he was.
It's like you don't really expect anyone that loses a fight of that magnitude to act that way.
No,
that's true.
It's a good point. Very good point.
And so that's why it's like after that fight was done and everything was out of the way, and then you basically go into the rematch and how he was completely different in the rematch, and then he eventually got the win. But real quick, going back to
good win, by the way. His performance was good.
Yeah, so going back to the things that were said, one of the things about either rather being Deontay Wilder or Anthony Joshua, one of the things that was brought up about the Joseph Parker thing, Joseph Parker kind of played his cards right, because when Anthony Joshua won the IBF title against Charles Martin, he had the one defense against Dominic Breazeale and won. He was working into what his next fight was going to be.
You mean Ruiz?
Before, no, this is back in 2016. Before he had the announcement that he was fighting Vladimir Klitschko, right? He was due to facing the top-rated contender in the IBF rankings. That guy was Joseph Parker. Apparently, Parker was also involved in the WBO rankings. So what happened is that you had the whole thing with Vladimir Klitschko to be part of the unification in that, and then they made the decision to have for the vacant WBO title Joseph Parker against Andy Ruiz. So with Joseph Parker winning that WBO title, he ended up parlaying that into going into the unification bout with Anthony Joshua and getting paid $9 million instead of $1 million if he fought, back in December of 2016. So that was a good play by Joseph Parker. But the other thing was Luis Ortiz, Dylan White, right? Have to get through this. Dylan White called out Luis Ortiz back in 2016.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
He called him out. He said, "Look, I know you're fighting Malik Scott. Malik Scott's my guy. I'm backing Malik Scott. But if anything happens where you're able to defeat Malik Scott, I want to fight you." So you had that fight with Luis Ortiz, Malik Scott. Luis Ortiz won. He immediately goes on.
Terrible fight, by the way. Awful.
He immediately goes on and fights Dave Allen. You talk about a terrible fight.
Fat Dave Allen.
Oh my God. So, but that fight between Ortiz and Dave Allen was part of the same card as Dylan White, Derek Chisora, and Anthony Joshua, Eric Molina. So once all of those fights were done, Luis Ortiz, they knew that he couldn't fight Anthony Joshua, being the number one contender, because he still held that. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to set up Dylan White versus Luis Ortiz in 2017.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening was Luis Ortiz and his team decided to sign with Heyman Boxing in March 2017. And they were going to set Ortiz up with the fight against, I think it was who did Bermond Severn like struggle with the guy? After Severn lost the first time to Wilder, he faced somebody else. Oh, Derek Rossi. That's who it was. They were going to set up Luis Ortiz to fight Derek Rossi, but Luis Ortiz ended up being injured and they scrapped that fight. And so
he's injured. Yeah.
So that is why he ended up not fighting during that whole time before they put him in with Deontay Wilder. So
perception is very interesting. Perception is very interesting because, call me crazy, but I thought the whole reason why Luis Ortiz signed with Matchroom was to get a fight with Anthony Joshua. I thought that was the reason why he signed. At least from me reading reports, that was what I was led to believe, that was the main reason why he signed. When he found out that him signing the agreement that they had with Eddie Hearn was not actually going to be what was agreed upon, him not fighting Anthony Joshua, he went to somewhere where he could get a title fight and fight Deontay Wilder. Like
I mean, that would make sense, Mike. That would make obvious sense. Yeah, I get that point.
You could say that from their side, but the thing about it is that you have to be aware of the situation once a fighter has a unified championship at the time.
Hold on, boys. I've got to be back. I'll be back.
Okay. Now, the thing is, real quick, Ortiz was supposed to be the flat out mandatory contender. He had the interim WBA championship, but he ended up getting stripped of that title. Okay. That is when they made the announcement that, okay, they're going to make, Anthony Joshua against Vladimir Klitschko, because Vladimir Klitschko was supposed to fight Tyson Fury for that WBA title and everything like that, but it didn't happen. So the problem was that the WBA was supposed to make Luis Ortiz versus Vladimir Klitschko for that vacant WBA title, and they didn't. They still kept Luis Ortiz as the mandatory contender, but the problem was that he was going to supposedly face the winner of Joshua Klitschko. With Joshua winning that fight and Joshua becoming a unified champion, he only had two choices. He had to. It looks like he had to cut out two. Joshua had two choices. He had to see if Vladimir Klitschko was going to take the rematch, or he was going to have to defend against his mandatory. Now, the thing about it is, Anthony Joshua won the IBF title in. Let me see if I can add him back in. Yeah, I'll add you back in here. All right. Anthony Joshua won the IBF title over Charles Martin in April 2016. So when he had his fight against Vladimir Klitschko, that served as the exception to not fighting a mandatory at the time. So with him having a unification fight, he kind of bypassed the mandatory at that particular time for the IBF title. So But with him winning, he either had to defend that mandatory IBF mandatory or be stripped, or fight Vladimir Klitschko once again. And with Vladimir Klitschko not, activating that rematch clause, then he had to fight the IBF mandatory at that time or be stripped. So it fell in line to the order of what the mandatories were. So what Joshua wanted to do was defend the IBF mandatory and then defend the WBA mandatory. But, I guess Ortiz didn't necessarily, want to wait for that to happen. So he, went on ahead and signed to fight Deontay Wilder for the WBC heavyweight championship. So that's pretty much how it goes. It's on Ortiz's management team to know those situations. But like I said, the thing with Ortiz is he has been with multiple promotional companies in just a short amount of time. So that's the thing with that. And, with Dylan White, like I said, he wanted to fight Luis Ortiz back then, and Luis Ortiz didn't really say much about it. And the thing about what happened in 2018 with Ortiz and White was after Luis Ortiz lost to Deontay Wilder, the WBC ordered a second mandatory fight between Ortiz and White. And White said that he wanted it to be a final eliminator, and the WBC didn't want to make it a final eliminator. That's why he refused that fight, because it wasn't a final eliminator. So there you go.
I don't get Joy going back and forth on like topics that nobody can prove and stuff.
Oh, wait a minute. Whoa. That can be proven. Come on, Mike. If there's anything that I do, I always prove what I say with
subjective topics. Topics. In terms of there are facts, there are things that are facts, but then the interpretation of the facts. That's what I'm saying. Like,
what? You can't interpret facts. Facts are facts, regardless.
You actually can. So let's say if we had
you know what? No. I just thought of something. No,
go ahead.
No. You know what I'm thinking about?
What's that?
The conversation we had after the Davis fight.
Which one?
Oh man, the thing about the best boxer.
Oh yeah, you can't interpret facts. Exactly. Yeah, you can interpret facts. See? It's only one interpretation.
Oh boy. Oh man. Oh, all right. Oh God. All right. Oh man. I'm gonna see if C-Dub could get back in here. He did want to talk about the whole thing with Josh Warrington and Shakur Stevenson that's gonna end up happening later this year. But what is it? We got a fight tonight or something. I don't even know if people are gonna. We got Jesse Hart against Joe Smith Jr. Oh, hold on. What did you think about the thing with Claressa Shields last night against Ivana Habazin? And her talking about being the greatest woman of all time, and being a 3-division champion in 10 fights, and kind of like comparing herself to like a Vasyl Lomachenko.
I think that any new fighter, we have to take that with an asterisk. The new era fighter, because the new era fighter has a possibility of 5 belts per weight class, and they have a possibility of 5 belts per weight class, and then you have certain weight classes that are 2 or 3 pounds within each other, and then you have it's like you got to take that with a grain of salt, because for someone to say I was a 3-belt champion in a time when there was only lightweight and middleweight. You know,
Yeah, like the original. What is it?
yeah,
Like original 7 or whatever it was. Yeah.
that's a different story than to say you have these, you know, new belts and then you have 5 belts. You have, you know, these major belts, and then you have like, you know, the belts that are like
You're called like the IBO. A lot of people bring up the IBO as the, you know, the next in line after WBC, IBF, WBO, and, you know, WBA. So that's like another belt that, you know, some
yeah.
people talk about. So,
But even past that, like the WBC, you know, the main person belt, and then, you know, you have those minor WBC belts. Like even those two, like people can win a minor belt and then say I'm a 4 champion, you know, a 4-time champion. Broner, I've been to probably 2 or 3 of the Broner fights. Young Broner, I used to love watching Young Broner fight. I thought very highly of Young Broner. But winning minor belts and then saying you won belts in all these weight classes, I just like, it's true. It's a fact, right? But then it's like you gotta have a marker on these things to say that, you know, you didn't win the major belt. You know, like it's taken away from somebody, but there is an asterisk on it. There's like, you know, there has to be some type of comment. So what do I feel about her saying that she won? You know, she was the fastest to win all of these belts in 10 fights, and, you know, faster than Lomachenko and things like that. I think that it's the exact same thing, you know, in a time where women's sports in terms of boxing probably was non-existent, and now it's becoming more and more mainstream, which is a good thing. I don't know how many belts the women have, but if it's anywhere similar where they have 3 or 4 belts in each weight class, and then their weight classes that she have went up from are within 5 pounds of each other, you know, like if she only went up 20 pounds or so, and, you know, she won belts in 4 weight divisions and only went up a total of 20 pounds since she first started, like I hear you and I get it. In terms of it being right, factual, I understand. Kudos, you're probably one of the best women boxers I've ever seen. I didn't really watch boxing when Layla Ali fought and stuff. Like I would go back and look at her fights and kind of decide that. But I think that she's a great boxer. The woman she had in front of her last night was not a challenge to her. Right. Even when she landed punches, like it seems like she fights fighters that aren't in her league. And so I'd be interested to see what happens when she fights a fighter like the girl who she beat, but then the girl never stopped trying. The one with all the braids and stuff, who got belts at another weight class, but then she beat her at her own weight class. I don't know if her name Brinkus, Cecilia Brinkus, is that her name?
Well, Brinkus is you know, another, you know, she's a division down, and she has been a long time, you know,
but did she fight her
champion at welterweight. No, they didn't fight each other, but there is a champion that Shields fought in her first fight. They both win their first fight. And that's Franchon Cruz-Dezurn. She is, you know.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, she is actually she is fighting tonight against Alejandra Jimenez in that fight card with Jaime Munguia. So she will be, you know, she has won a, you know, world titles at super middleweight. You know, after, you know, losing that initial fight to Claressa Shields, she moved up to super middleweight, and she is now a unified world champion there. So you do have a good number of, you know, fighters like, you know, Dezurn, like Amanda Serrano. Katie Taylor's like a good number of divisions down, so you wouldn't necessarily have, you know, where Taylor and Shields fight each other. And you have Cecilia Brinkus, but, you know, that's, you know, a lot different than, you know, in the males, where there's a lot, you know, a whole bunch more, like 10, probably up to 10 times more fighters in their particular divisions that are fighting for those world titles. You know what I mean? So,
but I do have one thing about Claressa Shields. Claressa Shields is very talented, and I think that the tools that she has makes her hell, I do believe she can beat some dudes. Like them lighter guys.
Mm-hmm.
She probably could beat some of those guys. Possibly. But the one thing that will make her very vulnerable is she get hit way too easily. And she get hit flush.
Mm-hmm.
When one of these girls who actually her size and just as much athleticism and as just as much as talented as she is, if one of them people hit her as clean as they did, she gonna get hurt. And it would be interesting to see. I don't want her to get hurt, but it'd be interesting to see her character when she gets hurt. Like we see it in other fighters, how they respond. Like Keith Thurman is a great example of this.
Mm-hmm.
We know he's weak to the body. But one thing I know, Keith Thurman is one tough SOB, because how he responds when he's visibly hurt, and we all know if you get hit in the body, it's debilitating. But
right.
In his mind, he continues to fight through, and he fights through it. And something that would put another man to his knee or have him rolling on the ground, he fights through it, and he mentally is like, you can see his body wanting him to do something, but his mind is willing him through it. What I would be interested to see is when she does fight that special fighter, and that special fighter hits her clean, which she's vulnerable to, and she's hurt, how she responds. We saw it with Mayweather, how he responded when he got clocked, them 5 times in his career. So he responded very well. Anthony Joshua, while you have to give him credit, he continued to endure, or trying to endure. He didn't want to be there. His will was broken. Like, you could see his will being broken by Ruiz. But the thing that you have to give him credit for is that he took a lot of punishment in those 2-3 rounds that he got hit and clipped and stuff.
Oh,
yeah, scary. It cut my TV off.
Oh man, yo.
Luckily my computer got a battery that was being plugged up and stuff.
Yeah.
Dang.
Oh goodness.
Hey, I won't talk about Claressa Shields no more. But nah, I want to see what happened when she get touched and and she has to endure. I'd be interested to see what's her character in terms of when she's not behind the 8 ball and she's 2-3 balls down. How does she respond then?
Yeah, I mean, I did bring up Franchon Crews-Dezurn. That was her first win overall. But Dezurn has won every fight since, and it's been unified champion. So that's one fight that I would look forward to seeing if they have a rematch. The other one is Savannah Marshall, who actually got a decision win over Claressa Shields in the amateurs. And she's campaigning there at the super middleweight division. So that's another attractive fight, because that fight between Claressa Shields and the thing with Cecilia Braekhus, that's not going to happen because Braekhus is not going to move up. So I mean, with Shields she ended up moving down for this particular fight, but I just don't see her moving down any more than this particular weight class that she's in. So there is that, and I just don't see what else is left for Claressa Shields at this point, other than moving up to back up to middleweight or super middleweight in order to get the supposed big fights that she says that she wants to have. So that's kind of like the situation that she's in right now. I'm not sure if C-Dub is able to get back. I think he got blitzed by the kids, so it's pretty much kind of like is mostly what I wanted to talk about, because we only had like a couple of fights coming up. We got fights tonight that we'll be able to take a look at on on ESPN and on the Zone, so you'll be able to check that out. We will be covering those fights on the live podcast on Blog Talk Radio Sunday 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. But I'd like to thank Mike for coming on here for this first live discussion here on the YouTube page for the Boxing Source. We're gonna see if we could, do a couple more of these, on the channel to, get some discussions going outside of, having a weekly podcast. So be on the lookout for that. So shout out to Mike Grady for coming in. Shout out to C-Dub for coming in, and we'll have more of these discussions later on. And so I'll catch y'all tomorrow on the show. Till then, peace out.